My name is Christina J. Castillo, and I am 34 years old. My boyfriend said, "You're too predictable. I miss the rush my ex gave me." I looked at him, nodded once, and said, "Understood." Then I stepped aside and gave him exactly what he said he wanted. What he didn't realize was that when you remove predictability from someone's life without replacing it with chaos, all that's left is silence. And silence is unbearable for people who only feel alive in emotional storms. I work in IT system support for a healthcare company. I live in a quiet suburb outside a major city, and my life runs on rhythm. Same wake-up time, same gym days, same grocery run every Sunday morning. It's not rigid, it's intentional. Routine is how I stay grounded in a world that constantly demands more than it gives. That matters later. My boyfriend is 29. We'd been together a little over 2 years and moved in together last spring. Everything looked clean on paper. We split rent and utilities. No shared accounts. No lease drama. No obvious red flags. At least not the kind people warn you about. The ones I missed were quieter. He likes to describe himself as spontaneous. His version of spontaneous usually means impulsive, reactive, and loud about it. He thrives on emotional swings. He says calm feels like boredom. I didn't understand how much that bothered him until recently. For months, he'd been making comments, little digs disguised as jokes, saying I was predictable, saying he always knew what I was going to do next. He'd smirk when he said it, like it was playful, like it wasn't an indictment. He also started bringing up his ex-girlfriend more, not directly, always as stories, late-night drives, screaming fights, breakups that ended in makeup sex. He never said he missed her. He didn't have to. The comparison was obvious. Chaos in his voice sounded like passion. Last Thursday night, he came home already irritated, tossed his keys onto the counter harder than necessary. I asked how his day was, the way partners do. He sighed like my concern was a burden. Then he said it. He said I was too predictable. He said being with me felt safe, but boring. He said safety wasn't enough anymore. And then casually, like it was just another thought, he said he missed the rush his ex gave him. He watched me closely after that, waiting, for jealousy, for anger, for me to scramble emotionally and prove I could still be exciting if I tried harder. I didn't give him any of it. I just said, "Understood." He blinked and asked what that was supposed to mean. I told him I heard him. He rolled his eyes and accused me of being passive-aggressive. Said he wanted passion, not silence. Said people get lazy once they're comfortable. I nodded, told him I was tired, and went to bed. He thought that was the end of it. What he didn't know was that predictability has one advantage. When it stops, it's impossible to ignore. And that night, while he slept, sprawled diagonally across the bed like he owned all the space, I stopped being predictable. Not out of spite, out of clarity. When someone tells you they miss the chaos their ex brought, they're not asking you to grow. They're asking you to audition for dysfunction. I'm not built for that, and I won't pretend to be. I didn't sleep much after that, but not because I was upset. It was because my mind felt unusually clear, like a fog I didn't realize I'd been walking through had lifted all at once. When someone tells you they miss the chaos their ex brought into their life, they aren't inviting you into a conversation. They're making a declaration. And once you hear it clearly, there's nothing left to debate. At 2:17 a.m., I slipped out of bed quietly. He was sprawled diagonally across the mattress, one leg hooked over my side like he owned it. Typical. I stood there for a second, watching him sleep, not with sadness, but with distance. The version of me that would have felt rejected, that would have wondered how to become louder or more exciting, was already gone. I started with the practical things. Clothes first. Only what was mine. Work clothes, gym gear, shoes, toiletries, laptop, passport. The things you don't leave behind if you're serious about not coming back. Every drawer I opened reminded me how much of my life had slowly adjusted itself around his comfort. I always made space. I always rearranged. I always softened. Not anymore. By 3 a.m., my car was loaded. I went back inside to do the part that would actually land. I opened my phone and deleted every photo of us. Trips, holidays, birthdays, dinners, all gone. Not archived. Deleted. I removed my relationship status, unfollowed him, blocked his stories. I didn't block his number yet. That came later. Then I unplugged my side of the apartment, my coffee machine, my speaker, my router extender. Small things, but they mattered. Predictability is built from details, and I was dismantling mine carefully. Finally, I sat at the kitchen counter and wrote a note. 1 page, no insults, no emotion, just facts. I didn't explain myself. I didn't defend anything. I didn't say sorry. I folded it once and left it under his keys. At 4:11 a.m., I walked out for the last time and locked the door behind me. No dramatic pause, no looking back. By the time he woke up, the predictability he complained about would be gone. No argument, no fight, no closure talk, just absence. I was already on the highway when my phone started buzzing. First call came at 6:42 a.m. I didn't answer. Then another. Then a string of texts. Where are you? Did you go to work early? Why is your side of the closet empty? I kept driving. By the time I pulled into the parking lot of a small extended stay hotel I'd booked overnight, the tone had shifted. Confusion turned into irritation. Irritation turned into accusation. He finally found the note around 7:30. I know because the calls stopped for exactly 3 minutes. Then the texts exploded. What the hell is this supposed to mean? Are you seriously doing this? You're being dramatic. This is not how adults handle things. Predictable. That word again. He always defaulted to contempt when he didn't get control. I didn't respond. Around noon, he switched tactics. Voice memos this time. Crying, but measured. Apologizing without actually apologizing. Saying he didn't mean it like that. Saying everyone says stupid things sometimes. Saying I was taking it too literally. That's when I blocked his number. Not angrily. Deliberately. Because when someone shows you what they value, the worst thing you can do is argue with the evidence. Later that afternoon, a mutual friend messaged me asking if everything was okay. They said he was freaking out and telling people I'd abandoned him without warning. I replied once, short and factual. I said I left after being told I was boring and interchangeable. I said I wasn't interested in competing with an ex for emotional adrenaline. I asked them not to relay messages. They didn't push. That night, alone in a quiet hotel room, something unexpected happened. I felt calm, no pit in my stomach, no urge to check my phone, no sense of loss, just space. I realized how much energy I'd spent trying to be exciting enough for someone who only felt alive when things were unstable. I had been confusing peace with stagnation because he taught me to. The rush he missed wasn't love, it was chaos, and chaos always wants an audience. I wasn't willing to be one anymore. By the next morning, the story had already started mutating without me. I stayed offline, but silence doesn't stop narratives, it just forces them to grow legs. Apparently, he told people I'd vanished overnight, that I'd blindsided him, that adults don't just leave without talking. He framed it like concern at first, then like betrayal. It was interesting how quickly responsibility turned into something he said happened to him instead of something he participated in. I didn't correct anything. I didn't counterpost. I didn't defend myself. I knew better than to wrestle someone in public who thrives on spectacle. The absence was doing more damage than any explanation ever could. Around mid-morning, he tried to work around the block. He emailed me from his work account. Subject line said we need to talk. No greeting, no apology, just urgency. I didn't reply. An hour later, security at my office called my extension, asking if I knew someone in the lobby, asking for me by name. I said no and asked them to handle it. I didn't feel satisfaction when I heard he'd been escorted out. I felt confirmation. Someone who respects boundaries doesn't try to ambush them. That's when the anger phase hit. Messages started coming through mutual friends. He was calling me heartless, saying I'd embarrassed him, saying I owed him a conversation after everything he invested. That word again, invested, like I was a project that stopped performing. One friend mentioned he said I must be spiraling, that he was worried about my mental health. Concern weaponized into control. What he couldn't stand wasn't that I left. It was that I left cleanly. No mess, no chaos, no leverage. He had nothing to grab onto. That afternoon, I unpacked at the hotel like I was settling in for longer than one night. Hung my clothes, set up my laptop, ordered the same dinner I always get when I need to think clearly. Predictable. Only this time, predictability felt grounding instead of something to be ashamed of. I reread the note I'd left him. I'd taken a photo before I left, not out of sentiment, but out of precision. I wanted to be sure I hadn't been cruel without realizing it. I hadn't been. There were no accusations, no blame, just boundaries. And that's when it clicked why he was spiraling. I hadn't given him anything to fight against. No villain speech, no emotional mess, no apology he could reject. He wanted friction. I gave him finality. 3 days later, the silence stopped being tolerable for him. He showed up at the apartment with one of his friends demanding access. I know this because the building manager emailed me asking why someone was insisting I'd emotionally abandoned shared property. That phrasing again. The manager told him I'd followed protocol. I removed only my belongings. No damage, no drama, no leverage. That seemed to break something. He started calling my parents. My mom answered once. He cried, said I vanished, said he was worried about me, said he feared I was spiraling. My mom asked one question. What did you say to her before she left? There was a pause. After that call, my parents blocked him. Through the same grapevine, I learned he'd reached out to his ex, the one he said gave him the rush. Apparently, she responded quickly. Apparently, that felt validating. Apparently, it also collapsed just as fast. No shock there. Chaos burns hot and dies young. What stood out was how quickly the attention around him faded once I was no longer part of the equation. Without my reactions, without arguments or explanations, there was nothing for him to bounce off of. No contrast, no stability to rebel against, just noise echoing back at itself. In my temporary room, things settled into rhythm. Same gym schedule, same work hours, same quiet evenings. The difference was no one was criticizing the calm or mistaking peace for complacency. I stopped replaying the moment he said I was too predictable. Not because it didn't matter, but because it said everything it needed to. Predictable didn't fail me. It saved me. About a week after I left, the consequences started landing in ways I hadn't anticipated. Not for me, for him. Mutual friends stopped checking in. Group chats went quiet. The people who had initially echoed his version of events lost interest once there was no ongoing drama to feed on. Stories without conflict don't trend for long. What I did hear, indirectly, was that he was angry about how cleanly I moved on. Not that I left, but that I didn't fight, didn't chase, didn't try to prove anything. That part bothered him the most. He wanted turbulence. He wanted pushback. He wanted me scrambling to re-earn relevance. Instead, I removed myself from the system entirely. That's not abandonment, that's opting out. By the end of that week, I signed a 6-month lease across town. Different commute, different gym, different grocery store. No overlapping routines. Predictability redirected instead of erased. When I moved in, I placed furniture intentionally, organized my closet the way I actually use it, stocked the kitchen with food I like instead of what worked for both of us. I didn't realize how much of my space had been quietly overtaken by someone else's preferences until they were gone. I stopped rushing home after work. I lingered at the gym. I cooked meals that took time instead of defaulting to whatever was easiest. I wasn't performing calm anymore. I was living in it. One evening, while organizing my desk, I found an old notebook. Inside were pages of reminders I'd written to myself over the last year. Be more spontaneous. Don't plan too far ahead. Try not to respond so logically. I read a few lines and closed it. I didn't feel angry. I felt relieved. I no longer needed instructions on how to be acceptable. Through mutual channels, I learned he was seeing someone new. It started fast. Late nights, big gestures, intense energy, exactly the kind of thing he used to describe as electric. I wasn't surprised. What did surprise me was how little I felt about it. No jealousy, no curiosity, just confirmation. Apparently it burned out just as quickly. A friend mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that he complained it wasn't the same without me reacting, that the fights didn't feel meaningful, that the highs burned out too fast. That part stuck with me. He didn't miss me. He missed the contrast. Chaos needs a baseline to feel exciting. Without one, it's just noise. I stopped framing the breakup as something that happened to me and started seeing it as something I chose. That shift mattered. One night, I deleted the last backup folder on my hard drive that still had old photos. I hadn't looked at them in weeks. Letting go isn't dramatic. It's administrative. Predictable wasn't a flaw. It was how trust is built. It's how homes stay standing. It's how lives become sustainable. He wanted a rush. I wanted something that lasted. Those desires were never going to coexist. Stop! Peep Part 5. It's been 3 months now. Nothing dramatic happened after that. No final confrontation. No apology tour. No surprise message asking to meet for closure. Just distance solidifying into permanence. My life is quieter, but it's heavier in a good way. Grounded. I wake up knowing what my day looks like, and instead of feeling trapped by that, I feel anchored. People still ask questions when relationships end suddenly. Did someone cheat? Was there a big fight? Was it something unforgivable? There wasn't. There was just a moment where someone told me exactly how they saw me. Too predictable. Not exciting enough. Replaceable if something louder came along. I believed him. and instead of trying to become someone else, I stepped aside. Packing up overnight wasn't impulsive, it was deliberate. Deleting the photos wasn't erasing history, it was refusing to live in it. Blocking contact wasn't avoidance, it was maintenance. The note wasn't for him, it was for me. I didn't leave because he was cruel. I left because he was honest about wanting something I couldn't give without losing myself. He wanted the rush. I wanted peace. Those aren't compromises, they're opposites. If anyone reading this is being told they're boring because they're consistent or predictable because they're stable, hear this clearly. Not everyone deserves access to calm. Some people only know how to exist in turbulence. You don't fix that by becoming louder. You fix it by stepping out of the storm. Predictability didn't make me small. It made my exit surgical. No mess, no back and forth, no reopening wounds. Just a clean break. She said she missed the rush. I gave her withdrawal. After I stepped out of the storm, I started noticing how loud silence can be when it's no longer filled with someone else's chaos. The first few weeks weren't dramatic. No tears at random hours. No urge to stalk social media. No second-guessing the note I'd left behind. What surprised me most was how quickly my nervous system recalibrated once it wasn't constantly bracing for emotional turbulence. I slept better. Not longer, but deeper. The kind of sleep where you don't wake up with your jaw clenched or your mind already racing through imaginary arguments that might happen later. Mornings became quiet rituals again. Coffee brewed at the same time. Gym at the same hour. Workdays unfolding with a rhythm I didn't realize I'd been defending for years. And slowly, the guilt people warned me about never showed up. What did show up were the echoes. Friends mentioning offhand comments he'd made, how he kept saying I left too cleanly, how it bothered him that there was no dramatic ending he could point to, no explosive moment where he could say, "See, this is why it failed." Clean endings don't offer villains. They offer mirrors. One mutual friend told me he kept asking the same question in different ways. How did she just leave like that? Not why I left. How? As if the mechanics mattered more than the reason, as if understanding the method might help him prevent it next time. That's when I realized something else. He didn't think predictability was boring. He thought it was permanent. He thought I would always be there, absorbing the emotional whiplash, smoothing the edges, staying steady no matter how reckless the swings became. My routine wasn't dull to him. It was reliable, and reliability, when taken for granted, starts to feel invisible. Invisibility is dangerous, not because it hurts your pride, but because it erases your presence from the equation entirely. You become infrastructure, necessary but unacknowledged. Like plumbing, you only notice it when it stops working. When I stopped working for him, he panicked. I heard later that he tried to recreate the rush almost immediately. New people, big gestures, fast intensity, stories posted late at night meant to look spontaneous and exciting. The kind of performative chaos that reads well online but collapses offline. That cycle burned out faster than even he expected. Without someone grounded to return to, the volatility had nowhere to land. Chaos without contrast isn't exciting, it's exhausting. There was a moment about 6 weeks after I left when I almost reached out. Not because I missed him, but because I felt something close to pity. The kind that creeps in when you recognize a pattern you finally escaped, but someone else is still trapped inside. I sat with that feeling for a full evening. Let it pass, and I'm glad I did. Pity is not a reason to reopen doors. Instead, I kept building a life that didn't require defending. I redecorated slowly, intentionally, chose furniture that felt solid, not trendy, rearranged my schedule so it worked for me, not for someone else's moods. I stopped apologizing for liking routine, stopped explaining why calm mattered to me, stopped treating stability like something that needed justification. That shift didn't make me harder. It made me clearer. The last update I heard came months later, almost accidentally. Someone mentioned he'd said I was too composed about the breakup, that it made him feel like he never mattered as much as he thought. That comment stuck with me, not because it hurt, but because it revealed the final misunderstanding. I didn't leave because he didn't matter. I left because I did. There's a difference between someone who wants passion and someone who wants permission to self-destruct with an audience, between someone who craves intensity and someone who confuses instability with intimacy. I wasn't boring. I was incompatible with chaos. And that's not something you fix by trying harder. If there's one thing I know now, it's this. When someone tells you they miss the rush their ex gave them, Believe them the first time. They are telling you exactly where you fall in their hierarchy of needs. Not at the top, but at the bottom. As the baseline they rebound from. The calm they reject and then secretly rely on. Walking away without drama isn't cold, it's clarity. I didn't disappear to punish anyone. I disappeared to preserve something that finally felt worth protecting. My peace, my rhythm, my sense of self that doesn't spike or crash depending on who's in the room. Predictability didn't fail me. It freed me. And the quiet that followed wasn't empty. It was mine.